Hello everyone and welcome back to the Grimm Reader. This is the Grimm Chronicles, episode 24 for the past week. And I'm having a hard time gathering my thoughts together, so I'm just going to jump right into it. In general, my reading has been rather scattered and distracted because of us getting ready for the big reflooring of our house. Nevertheless, I have a few things I wanted to chat with you about. The first one is that we recently rewatched the older BBC miniseries Brideshead Revisited based on the Evelyn Waugh novel. And I really do think it was very, very good. And it starred Jeremy Irons as Charles Ryder, the person who becomes enamored with this Catholic family, this upper class Catholic family. And I really do want to read the novel because I'm almost wondering whether the series is better, not better than, but as good as the novel, or maybe even hones in on some of the key important moments of the novel and kind of brings them home in a very interesting or well done way. And one of those moments would be how Ryder, the character of Ryder, who is very well drawn, how we see him really just not understanding the role of Catholicism and religion and belief in God, and how that doesn't make him seem it doesn't make him seem more sympathetic. It makes him just seem unable to understand. And it's not that we have that much more sympathy for them either. It's almost, and this I think is why one of the pluses of the show, maybe even the book, when you have these sort of societal issues that come to the fore and there's no good or bad, or, our sympathies are divided, is what I'm trying to say here in a very convoluted way. And the final episodes were really good because we see how the death of the patriarch of the family turns into this battle for will he or won't he accept the last rites. So come back to Catholicism. And it's really well set up. So you have the eldest son of the family who's like the complete bourgeois, even though, this is an upper class aristocratic family. He's almost like a petit bourgeois. He's obsessed. He's very he doesn't read. He's not intellectual. He's not artistic. He's not sophisticated in any way. He's just he's very bourgeois. He likes to collect matchboxes and they all make fun of that. And then he finds this lady that he wants to get married to but he's also very, very by the book Catholic, unlike the other kids. I mean, Sebastian's already left the picture. I don't actually recall if we even find out what happened to Sebastian. And then the daughter, Julia, she's also really interesting. She has this, I am going to spoil the book a little bit, but I really don't think, if you should all read the book anyway, it doesn't really matter that plot elements, but maybe I should, now I'm rethinking it. Anyway, her relationship is also really interesting. I'm walking back from the actual spoiler there. But we see how, well, in a very general way, Charles is obsessed with the family and also with the building that they live in, the manor. And we see him kind of not understanding Catholicism and their relationship to it, and being disdainful of, and also as he grows older, becoming insufferable in his inability to understand. And it becomes the kind of thing that keeps him on the outside of them all. And so yeah, I highly recommend the book and this BBC series, which we were able to get to, I think, on BritBox, the one streaming thing that you get all the Brit shows on. Highly recommended. I mean, Jeremy Irons is amazing. Anthony Andrews, the first episodes where they're gallivanting around Oxford are just so wonderful too. I mean, anyone who has any kind of Anglophile stuff going on and likes Oxford stuff, highly recommended. And so yeah, we watched that. And I'm plugging along through my book, which I still don't think is very good, but I'm going to finish it. It's not terrible enough that I won't be able to finish. And I should have finished it last week. This is a sign of distracted reading. And so I am kind of surprised that it's not marketed as a YA book, because to me it does read very much like a YA. So in my kind of disdainful well, that means that the characters are not really very complex. They're a little bit cardboardy, even though they're mildly interesting. And this may sound strange, but the most interesting scenes in a way are the one where our heroine gets together with her boyfriend or her quasi-boyfriend, and they don't quite have sex, but they engage in, before sex stuff. But our author kind of uses these episodes to, maybe she's sort of euphemistically trying to describe what's going on, but she uses a very sort of ethereal, fantasy-like descriptions of floating away on the clouds type stuff, but it's quite well done. And I mean, in a way, the most interesting writing of the whole book, if I may say, which I thought was a little surprising. I mean, I'm a little bit like, okay, yeah, okay, we can move on now. But on the other hand, I think those scenes are quite compelling. I mean, quite well done, let's put it that way. Whereas the rest of the book, so for I would want it to be more fantasy, and it's called The Elementals. And of course, it hones in on our heroine, whose name is Ariel. She's the sylph. And then she has these 3 friends who are very Ren Fair type people, and their food seems to affect her, and their drinks seem to affect her in a certain sense. And there's a little bit of hazing going on. There's one scene that's a little uncomfortable because there's a little bit of hazing from one of the 4 elementals. But yet they haven't come out as complete elementals yet, and they haven't kind of gone off into Narnia realms, which is sort of what I'm waiting for. I want more of the fantasy, not less of it. And she's a bit of a sad loner type person, Ariel, and so on her own I'm not sure if she can carry the book, and she's sort of pining after her female friend, best friend, who went missing under strange circumstances. So the denouement is obviously going to be connected to her friend Jenny. And so yeah, I would want it to be more, not less realistic. More fantasy. I want it to be less realistic than it is, because in a way that would probably make it more fun, for me at least. And also, as I wrote down here in my notes, so the plot, because the writing's not great, the plot is a little bit, it's the structure of it all is too apparent, and you're not taken in enough by great writing that you just are reading for the pleasure of it. It's a little bit too transparent, and a little bit too plodding is the word I would use. And I do have the sense of, come on, let's get to the point. So there's maybe a pacing issue too. Nevertheless, the reason why you can perhaps go ahead and look for yourself and maybe read it is because I'm not DNFing it. It's not like, the John Green novel that I started and then I just could not finish, or I just decided it, even after a few pages, it was too much for me. I just couldn't do it. Let's see. And so that's The Elementals. I'm still not going to talk much about Karenina because I have read a little bit more, but not enough. And it's been a while since I addressed or thought about it much. Just a little bit about the fantasy novel that I'm listening to. The second volume of the Malazan Empire series. It's a 10-series high epic fantasy drama by Steven Eriksen, and this is the second volume entitled Deadhouse Gates, and I'm listening to it forever and ever because it's very long. I mean, chapter 10 and there's 24 chapters, so I haven't even made it halfway. It's better than not better, but I'm enjoying it even more than the first one because I now know the world, and so I'm sort of familiar with what's going on, and it does center a lot on war and the sort of the negative aspects of war, but from a fantasy magical perspective. So stuff from the past, or sort of specters and ghost-like figures from the past, are always coming into the present and kind of interacting in certain strange ways or sad ways. And also it does hinge on a complicated magic system that's connected to these magical spaces called warrens, which I always think of bunny rabbits with warrens, but maybe I'm wrong. And these wizards or mages, as I think they're called, are able to open up these magical spaces where kind of the time-space continuum is in flux, so to speak. I'm not doing a very good job of this, but it's well done, and it's interesting and layered. And and there are a lot of people, and I'm not getting all creatures. Let's put it this way: creatures. There's a lot of creatures in this one. They're not all people, humanoid, but also not. And he does a really good job of mixing the sort of the mystical, magical, time playing aspect with the fantasy stuff. It's really, really well done and really quite well written. Highly recommend it for any of you fantasy people out there, and a lot of fantasy people already know about this series, so, you know. And I guess it does sort of take a little bit of willingness to be a part of this kind of type of writing. See, I was thinking, because of one thing, tiny thing in the novel, of Dune. I'm an Australian American. Anyway, you know what I'm referring to. Frank Herbert. Is that his name? Frank Herbert. Yeah, not the other Frank, not the Wizard of Oz Frank. That's Baum. Sorry, getting silly here. I did not like Dune, except for the beginning. For some reason, and I also listened to that one, I didn't care for it, and it kind of got boring, I thought. In a way that this isn't. This is sort of more like Game of Thrones, but not really, because it's a different world. And I don't know the writing of that one. I really just know the TV show. No, I would say this is not Game of Thrones, because it's less. Game of Thrones really does have that kind of medieval feel and vibe, and this one doesn't really. It's pure fantasy. I mean, I guess in the sense that they don't have airplanes and stuff. It's medieval. And cars. They only have cars. So yeah, no, I don't know. Anyway, I'm blabbing a little bit about Eriksen. So that's going well, even though it's going slowly. And so part of the reason why the reading took a bit of a backseat this week is that on Thursday, which was going to be devoted to, oh, let me have a reading day, blah, blah, blah. And instead I was asked to, so if you're an academic in the humanities, actually science too, even because of COVID, you may have heard of peer-reviewed essays and all that stuff. And so what is peer review? So peer review means a peer reviews someone's work before the journal lets it be published. It gets input from peers as to whether something is worthy of publication. And I was a peer and I reviewed something. And I can't say anything about that, what I did, except that it took a lot out of me and it took time out of me. And I was reading something that hasn't been published yet. And the only thing I'll say there is it had a lot to do with what I used to work on with the two people, the one person I used to work on, whom I won't even name because that's already perhaps giving something away. And it was, in retrospect, I really liked that I did it, but it was very kind of somewhat, I'm going to say very, not somewhat, anxiety inducing, and with my anxiety, because it took me back to when I was trying to get tenure, when I was trying to publish, and I perished instead, and I lived to tell the tale, so that's all good. So it took me back to when I was more in the field, so to speak, in a way that was a little bit anxiety inducing. Because you're evaluating, and evaluation is tricky. Because it involves people, and so it's tricky. And so that's one reason why I did read something that I can't talk about at all. But I'm glad I did it. And yeah. And then last but not least, I'm going to just mention that we did, because we're in the process of bringing books to be culled to half prices on Sunday. We bought a bunch of books to a different half-price store. So not the one closest to us, which is in a town called Hamilton. This one is in a town, it's on the way to Cincinnati. Kenwood there's a mall called Kenwood that some of you might know if you're from the area. And then, so there's a half price there. And that's a much bigger one. And it's so annoying because the Hamilton people said we can bring all the books we want, boxes we can, and then we walked in there and they said, no, you can only bring 4. So that was a bit of I should have called first. I thought all half prices were the same in terms of what they would accept in terms of donations. Well, they're not really donations because you are actually selling them and you do get money from them. They go through the boxes and they give you which is actually really great that we have a service like that close by that will take your books and look at them and give you money for them. And so we were only able to get 4 boxes. We had 7 in the car, so we still have 3 to give, which will just run by the other one. But in terms of books to buy, they had they were better stocked. I have to say, bigger. There's just more of them, and we didn't have that much time. But I did pick up a few here. I picked up these 3. I know it's weird that I'm giving books away and then buying new ones, but you know what? It's okay. So the first one I decided to go with, because I've always been interested, I know Britta Burla loves her, and I always wanted to I want to try a Jeanette Winterson. Oranges are not the only fruit. This is a classic of the LGBTQ genre, I would say, right? Am I right there? I'm pretty sure I'm right. And so yeah, I wanted to try that one, and it's a fairly nice copy. I like the picture of this Eve-like lady. Next up, I was excited to find a really nice condition of another Sylvia Townsend Warner book. Now, this is Lolly Willow's lady, and this is a historical novel, and I think she's a really interesting writer. And so this is in pristine condition. I was happy to find this one. It's quite long. What's it called? It's called The Corner That Held Him, but she's really, and I do like this cover. It looks like Tinton Abbey. Is it Tinton Abbey? Priory Church, some ruins, pretty ruins on this nice edition. So I had to pick that one up. I was very excited to find. I do kind of look for good conditions, and this is also in pretty good condition. This is a German or Austrian canonical work by Joseph Ross that I did not have on my shelves, and this is the Radetzky March. You are the grandchild of the hero von Solferino. But of his strength nothing has remained with the soft and sensitive Karl Josef von Trotta. It reminds me of Buddenbrooks just in that description. Thomas Mann novel. Oh, I think I'm gonna like this. This is just my jam. I'm sorry. Oldie timey stuff about, well, I am kind of like the whole Brideshead like and I said this to Bill, like it does remind me of Buddenbrooks, the sort of the decline of the family because of external forces, because of the world moving forward and the family structures not being able to keep up. So yeah, those are the three that I picked up from that half price. So yeah, I think we're gonna finish up for this week. I hope everyone is doing well, and I really appreciate people watching my videos. I know I have not been interacting with YouTube very much, BookTube very much, but you know, I'm still here, and I'm still gonna offer these weekly chit chats. And thank you all for watching, and I'll be back next week. Bye bye.